Joining us now, Phil Prazan, who anchors Lone Star Politics and is a reporter for NBC Dallas-Fort Worth. Phil, I'm so glad you're able to join us this morning. So these polls show the race pretty close right now, within the margin of error. But Democrats have been saying for years Texas is about to turn blue. It hasn't. So where do things stand?
Well, great to be with you this morning. This is a competitive race. It has been a competitive race for a little bit now. Both candidates have a path to victory. Senator Cruz has a bigger and a better path, but Congressman Allred has a plan. He seems to be working that plan, and that plan really comes down to Republican voters who may be turned off away from Ted Cruz. If he can get those voters, he has a better chance of winning. And believe it or not, there are Trump Allred voters. I personally have talked to some of them. And then also Senator Cruz consistently underperforms former President Trump in most of the public polling we've seen. So that is a factor. And then what's really interesting for us here in Texas is, all right, so 6 years ago, Senator Cruz won by roughly 215,000 votes. Since then, in the last 6 years, we have now more than 2.5 million new registered voters. Who are these people? We have a general idea of who they are. Some are Republican political refugees from New York, California, those states. Some are young, diverse voters. Some are new naturalized citizens who have just registered to vote. In North Texas alone, in the last year, about 60,000 people have become citizens through the naturalization process. So it's going to be really interesting to watch.
I'm really curious to hear what issues might be motivating Texans in this race, which may favor one candidate or the other, right?
Well, you have the big ones, right? You have immigration, border security, you have the economy, you have abortion or reproductive rights. But when we're talking about those swing, moderate Republican voters in the middle, a lot of them live in the suburbs. Colin Allred needs these people to cross over. That's why you see him talking about abortion and reproductive freedom. And that's why you see him highlighting that now infamous trip that Ted Cruz took to Cancun. He believes that those are issues that can move voters his way. If you're Senator Cruz, you want to keep those traditionally Republican voters voting Republican down ballot. So that's why he's talking about immigration and border security consistently. That is the #1 issue of Texas Republicans year after year after year. And then also the transgender issue. Congressman Colin Allred has taken some votes on that issue that might have played better in his Dallas district. And it's just a tougher sell when it comes to selling that statewide. That's why you see some pretty dramatic ads from Senator Cruz and also Colin Allred responding with his own ads on that issue.
Phil, we don't think of Texas as a presidential swing state, but we did see Vice President Harris and Trump there on Friday. How unusual is that so close to Election Day? And could those visits move the needle at all here in like a Senate race?
So it's a symptom of our nationalization of politics, but there are two impacts. One is locally, like you said. If Vice President Harris can get Texas in the low single digits, that is when somebody like Colin Allred could sneak across the finish line with those Republican swing voters. And she had her event in Houston, which is Harris County, and that is the Democratic powerhouse county in the state of Texas. If they really juice the turnout there, this state will become more competitive. And then also I think part of it was she wanted to redirect the conversation to abortion and reproductive rights here in Texas. We are the kind of ground zero for that with our strict anti-abortion laws that only has a very narrow medical exemption. It doesn't have an exemption for rape or incest. So, there was a lot of attention about what the former president has said. I think she wants to redirect the conversation, what she wants to talk about, which is reproductive freedom. And then, we had former President Donald Trump in Austin on Friday, too. He was talking to the podcaster Joe Rogan, very popular podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. And the thing to watch about that is former President Trump needs to expand the electorate, right? He needs to find people who have not voted before and turn them out to vote. And he thinks he can do that by activating young men who listens to Joe Rogan and also Theo Von, Logan Paul, some of these other Manosphere podcasts. He thinks he can activate them and turn them out to vote. If he does this, his path is better come Election Day.
Really enlightening conversation. Thanks for giving us the insights there in Texas. Phil Prazan, great to have you here. And now joining us, Democratic Senate candidate from the state of Texas, Congressman Colin Allred. Congressman, thanks for making time for us. It is the home stretch, just 8 days to go. And the polls show essentially a toss-up race. But Cruz has also faced quite a close race, as you'll remember, against Beto O'Rourke back in 2018. He went on to win. So why do you think the outcome of your race will be different this time?
Well, this is not about our past. It's about our future. This is a different election, a different time. And to be quite honest, Senator Cruz has continued to show how he should not be placed in a position of authority for 6 more years with going to Cancun when we needed him most. That's happened since the last election, with trying to overturn the last presidential election, with being uniquely responsible for this abortion ban that we have here in Texas, for taking down a bipartisan border bill that no state would have benefited more from than Texas. And I'm also a different opponent. I'm the most bipartisan Texan in Congress. I've got a record of winning in tough races, and we're going to beat Ted Cruz on November 5th.
I understand your internal polling shows the race essentially tied, much tighter than even that New York Times within the margin of error stat we just gave. What's your team seeing that other pollsters are missing?
Listen, honestly, I leave that to my team. To me, we're way past polling. We've had hundreds of thousands of votes already banked, and this is a time where Texans are voting right now. And what Texans need to know and what folks watching this need to know is that they can go to colinallred.com, get involved with us, knock on doors, make phone calls, turn out the vote, contribute to our campaign. This is how we win down the final stretch, is that we have built a machine that we can now turn out this vote, but it takes all of us and every single person getting involved. So for anyone watching this who understands how important this race is, I hope you'll do that.
Donald Trump has a 50% favorability rating there in Texas. Cruz appeared with Trump when he was there on Friday. To those who think the Trump factor will get Cruz over that finish line, what's your message?
Well, it's just not. I think Texans see this as 2 very different decisions. Number one, we've been dealing with Ted Cruz for 12 years here, and we've seen exactly, how ineffective he has been. We're picking someone who's going to serve us longer than the term of the next president. And I think Texans just know that we can't count on Ted Cruz in a crisis. That's how you go to Cancun when folks need you most. And as I said earlier, he's running against me, and he's running in a race where I have made sure that Texans know my story, that I'm a 4th-generation Texan that's raised by a single mother, captained the football team at Baylor, played in the NFL, became a lawyer, have served in Congress in a way that shows it's possible to do the exact opposite of Ted Cruz. And that's what I think Texans are going to try and turn the page towards on November 5th, and for fresh ideas and new leadership. Texas
is a border state, of course, and we know immigration and border security, big issues there. Your opponent, Ted Cruz, says you have flip-flopped on this, pointing to your past remarks, calling the border wall racist, for example. Now you're supporting a border bill that is funding in part for a border wall. What do you say to those folks, those voters in Texas who don't really know where you stand, who might think you've changed your stance on immigration for political reasons?
Listen, my family's from Brownsville, the tip of Texas. My grandfather was a customs officer there. I spent a lot of my childhood in our border communities. So this is personal for me, and I'm not going to put up with any nonsense from Ted Cruz on this. This guy has had 12 years to try and do something about the southern border, and he has not only not done anything, he's prevented us from doing anything. Just earlier this year, he said we don't need a border bill. Well, what was in that? $20 billion for border security, for 1,500 new Border Patrol agents. Where would they have been in Texas? For more immigration judges, where would they have been? Helping out to deal with our asylum backlog. For technology to stop fentanyl, that would have helped Texas. So, and this is not the first time. Back in 2013, he took down a bipartisan effort that President Obama and a group of senators are working on to try and reform our legal immigration system. He's done this his entire career. He'll never get the job done. I think Texans are understanding that, and that if we continue to do the same thing and expect a different result, that's kind of the definition of insanity.
Congressman, I do want to get your reaction real quickly on the topic we spent a lot of time speaking about at the top of the show, the remarks we heard yesterday at Madison Square Garden from Trump allies, Trump and others that could be considered divisive at least, but racist and beyond. What's your reaction? We know there's a huge Latino population there in Texas who may have strong feelings about what they heard.
Yeah. Well, Texas is an incredibly diverse state. We are diverse in every sense. We have folks from all over the world who've made their home in Texas. And my entire life, I've grown up in a state knowing that not only, as you said, are we a border state, but we're a state that has embraced our diversity. And, we have our own version in Ted Cruz of somebody who has spent his entire time in the Senate pitting Texans against each other, trying to take the seams in our society and widening them, telling folks that the issue is the person who's next door to you or down the street from you or down the block from you. And that's just not who we are as Texans, and it's not who we are as Americans. And we have to make sure that we drive this kind of nonsense out of our politics. And the way we do that is at the ballot box. That is how we get folks to understand that this is not only bad in terms of the wrong thing to do and wrong for our country, that it's bad politics and that you'll lose elections when you talk like this, when you spend 12 years, as Ted Cruz has done, behaving this way, that you won't come back. And I promise you then we'll see a better politics and we'll see our public discussions end up in a much healthier place.